Being here tonight, and we will start off with everyone stand and we'll say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just a reminder, there is a sheet up here for sign in if you'd like to sign in. First on the agenda, we have recognition, our mountain movers.
Okay, and before we do that, we do have one addition, which is just H under superintendent's report. And this had been brought up before about a 100% tobacco-free school district. I do have some information on that for y'all to look at. By no means asking you to vote on it, just information for y'all to see tonight, okay? That's the only addition. Okay, and to begin with, we want to recognize our mountain movers this week. The first individual is not able to be with us tonight, I don't think, but our certified mountain mover this month is Austin Moore. And Austin has been teaching U.S. history at Estill County High School for 3 years and was a substitute starting in 2011. He's coached football for 12 years and been the defense coordinator since 2013. And Austin says he always enjoys working with high school kids, particularly discussing things that will help them in life. And I know that those kids out there really admire Austin Moore, and congratulations to Austin for being the certified mountain mover of the month, and we'll make sure that he gets his certificate and his Medal of Excellence. And our next individual is our classified mountain mover of the month, and that's Miss Lena Marshall. If she'll come on up. Lena's in her 18th year as a paraeducator with the Estill County Schools, and Lena is currently, I think we'll switch here. Lena's currently a paraeducator for Miss Sandy Bonney at South Irvin. That's all right. Miss Bonnie's at Estill Springs. That's not written up correctly. I'm gonna have to get on to Miss Dawes on that. She's gone back to last year, hasn't she? And Lena says she loves the kids, and helping them has always been her passion. She says she treats those babies the way she wanted others to treat her baby. And Lena, for your work with our kids, I also want to present you with the Medal of Excellence tonight as well for the work you do. Thank you. That's our mountain movers this time.
And next on the agenda, we have approved resolution, Love Kentucky Public Education.
As you all know, you don't have to look very far to understand that public education is basically under attack from a lot of different areas. And recently I was at the AASA conference in Nashville here about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and one of the big movements with AASA is I Love Public Schools, or I Heart Public Schools, and the Kentucky Association of School Administrators has decided to adapt that same program and talk about the fact that basically that we love Kentucky public schools. And although there are always challenges, and there's a lot of things that we can always do better, and we should always be striving to do better. Public schools in Kentucky since 1991 has made a dramatic turnaround from where we were at that time. And we've seen a lot of change, a lot of initiatives, and a lot of growth. And Kentucky is recognized as one of the leaders in public education. We used to be Everybody used to say, thank God for Mississippi, because if it wasn't for Mississippi, we would have been dead last. And that's not what's being said any longer. It's been basically talked about that that Kentucky public schools are in the front running status in terms of a lot of the initiatives and a lot of the growth that we've seen. And it seems like that whether we're talking about budgets, and as you all know, you've worked with the budget here now, some of you know this is your second go around in terms of having to come up with a budget when you've got less and less money, but you're still expected to deliver same results, or whether we're dealing with the pension reform crisis that we have in Kentucky. And I think most educators would tell you that, yes, we understand that there has to be some changes made in the pensions, but I do think that when you have the governor of our state that tells teachers that they're ignorant and that they are misinformed, I think that statement in itself that he made yesterday tells us that he does not have any respect for public education. And I would hope at some point in time the man would basically apologize. He should. But I've not seen that out of him, and I don't know that that will be forthcoming. But what we're asking for all school boards to do is to adopt a resolution, and this resolution would be of the Estill County Board of Education in support of Kentucky Public Schools. It's just saying that, hey, Kentucky Public Schools, we know that we've got room for improvement, but there is a lot of good things going on in Kentucky Public Schools, and we need to recognize that. And that was the resolution that's before you tonight. So my recommendation is that we would approve this resolution, as probably I think you'll see all 173 school districts in the state of Kentucky do so.
I'll make a motion that we approve the Kentucky Public Education resolution.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion
Okay.
to approve.
Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
Okay, and there's a copy of that somewhere here for everybody to sign, if you would sign it. And I signed one just a minute ago, and I don't know what I did with it. Did I put it in a folder?
I saw it, but
Felicia, did I put that in a folder?
the extras.
Here it is. I'm sorry. I've signed that one, and if everybody would go ahead and give their signature, and I would ask if possible, if the paper, if we get a copy of the one with the signatures, that we could publish that this coming week. Thank you. Oh, listen, we understand. Thank you.
I want you to sign that one.
Alicia, if you don't care, you can make a copy of this and scan it to both papers. Thank you all.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have facilities.
To start out with, the first thing I wanted to do is give you an update on the district bonding capacity. The last time we met, the House had adjusted their budget, and within the House budget, the nickel has been equalized, which of course is something that's happened every year since this took place with the reform in '91. As we know, the equalization is the big part of that. As you know, we sold it that for every dollar the local community raised, state government would match it, and it was about $2.10 at the time. Well, a couple things has happened since then, there's still some debate about the budget, but it's still in the House budget. And in talking today, I have been on the phone with 3 legislators today, 1 state senator, Mr. Jim Codell. I've been on the phone with Mr. Mike Boland, who's a former state government worker. I've spent a lot of time today basically trying to find out exactly where we're at with the state budget. There's some things up in the air, but it still appears that the budget will move forward, and I believe that equalization will be there when the time comes. It's just not in final stone yet, as you know. We've got until April 1 with the budget for them to try to get a budget hammered out. And regardless, if something happens, we do not have a budget during this session. I do not believe that the legislature will fool around and let the governor basically at that point in time, come July 1, if there's no budget, then the governor then pretty much controls the spending in the state. I just don't think that will happen. So I asked for an update. So there's a couple things that's happened with the equalization as it is, which is what we expected, but also the equalization amount itself has changed. It's no longer $2.10, it's more than $2.10. So what that resulted in is our bonding potential increased by almost $1 million because of the change in equalization. It went from like 9.3 million to a total of $10.2 million, as you see there in that first column. With the 25% equalization, which is what's in the budget right now, that will actually be a little over $12.5 million. So we actually have a little over $1 million more to bond than we had previously, as long as it stays in the budget. And I'm not going to tell you that there's any exacts here because we're doing Frankfurt. With that being said, the next chart down there basically tells you how much money you have available to make your payments. That's basically the money you have to pay your mortgage. If you looked at this like a mortgage, if we take out a mortgage on these buildings, then how much money do you have to pay into your mortgage? With no equalization, we actually have almost $1.3 million per year to make our mortgage payment. With equalization, it will go to $1.45 million, which would allow us to bond up to that $12.3 million. And the last chart down there is just basically telling you what projects are what we have out there right now. If you remember, we talked about in 2032, if we had not passed the nickel, it would have been 2032 before we had any money. And you can see there that our payments was bonded out at about $900,000. That's all we had to pay our payments. The 2 lines up there, the green line is the amount of money we have with 25% equalization. So as you can see, and the purple line is what we have with no equalization. So as you can see, we have money available to bond these current projects. And I believe, if I know the chart right, the orange down there at the bottom has to do with West Irvin. The purple has to do with South Irvin. The yellow is the high school project, I believe it was, and those may be reversed. It may be the purple's the high school, the yellow is South Irvin. The blue is basically our payments moving forward. I think it's one of the West Irvin things as well. So, and I don't think that is our new projects coming up. So as you can see, we've got money available to make additional mortgage payments is basically what that chart tells you. And I just wanted to update that and pretty much tell you the good news is that we have an additional $1 million over what we thought we had to begin with. And we also have about an additional $500,000 of SFCC bonding, which is a new offer of assistance. That is also part of that. So that's good news on the home front, that there is additional money. Again, just remember, this money is strictly for facilities. So our public knows, when we pass that nickel is about facility construction. It cannot be used for any other purpose. So this is the result of what we've had recently in terms of our bonding news. And if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, we can move forward.
So if we do all these projects, how much additional bonding potential does that give us if we have another emergency type situation? Like say, for instance, the HVAC crashes at the high school or another roof.
Well, there are some emergency clauses within KDE. If you have an emergency like that, there's emergency funding available. But in our particular case, I think right now, based on the BG ones, and the only two projects we've got going to bid here in April would be Estill Springs and would be the two roof projects. So those are the ones that we've got to make payment. If you accepted all of the alternates and everything on those projects, those two projects are projected to be somewhere right around $5.5 to $6 million. I mean, that's just the projection on those. So as you can see, you've got bonding for up to $12 million. So you would have $6 million in reserve right now moving forward until we get to the Career Tech facility, and we'll discuss it here in just a minute, and we'll talk about the funding for that building as well. So when you bond these two projects, or if we take bids and we take all the alternates, and that's everything projected, it's somewhere between $5.5 and $6 million for those two projects. So to answer your question, we would have approximately $6 million sitting in reserve.
Without the Career and Tech Center.
Without the Career Tech Center. And as soon as we know what the equalization is, LW, what it's been in the past is here lately, they've been equalizing 25, 25, and then 100%. So next July, if they equalize it, we've got, as we said there, if they equalize it, we've got almost $12.5 million. Next July, you'll get about another $1 million on top of that, maybe a little bit more. And then the following July, you're going to get an additional $7 million because that's when it will be fully equalized. So eventually, your bonding potential is going to go to a little over $20 million, as long as
they
enrollment. Yeah, but it'll be equalized this time. We'll know that by April 1. Because once it's equalized the first time, then it's always been in the budget after that. Because if they don't do that, then there's a lot of school districts out there with nickels that's been equalized that they just can't afford to go back on. So by next July, you're looking at having an additional $1 million. July after that, an additional $7 million on top of that. So there's quite a bit of bonding potential there. Okay? Anyone else? Okay. That's just for y'all's information.
So next we have the Tech Center.
Yeah, and we've got Roland and Peter here tonight, so we're going to talk about this, the Career and Tech Center here for just a minute. And one of the things I want to start out with is that's what I've been spending most of my time with today, is trying to nail down to tell you all, because we've got not only sort of a schematic design of what that facility will look like, but we also have a BG1 for you all to sort of give initial approval to, and it will change a little bit. We're going to give some initial approval, or hopefully we'll give some initial approval where they can continue to move forward with design, but we've also got to have that discussion exactly how you all want to play this, because the budget has a big deal to do with this Career Tech Center as well. So to start out with, let's talk about the finances for this building. As you all know, we received a $5.7 million grant. You can see the BG1 there, and Roland will go into some more detail here in a minute with the BG1, but the BG1 is about $12.5 million. Well, in the original grant proposal, that building was projected to be somewhere around $10.5 million, and that was total project cost. And that was based on the fact that, okay, this is what a building looks like, this is where we're at with this is where we're at with that. So it was pretty much a ballpark estimate of what a building that size would cost you. So first of all, to tell you, well, why is that more than what's in the grant? As you know, the first thing that we ran into was when we was trying to look for a property to build it on. We were seeing that it was going to cost us an additional $1 million or more just to acquire the site, make sure it had adequate utilities, adequate fiber, all those things, the site purchase itself. So that was going to include a lot of money, which was a lot more than was in the original budget that was projected to begin with. So we decided on the high school side. Well, I think all of us pretty much knew when we decided to come to the high school that we had pyritic shell at the middle school. We had pyritic shell at the high school, and the renovation was done at the high school. So we knew that there was going to have to be some additional foundation work on this building if pyritic shell was there. And of course, we figured it was there, and it is there based on the core drillings that was done. So there's going to have to be some additional cost into the foundation of this building to make sure we don't have the same problems we have at the middle school with the floors moving as they have in the past. So that, of course, was an additional cost. I think it was projected for this building to be about $200 per square foot. That has been increased to $220 a square foot to try to offset what could be additional expenses. And they're looking at this, the engineers are still looking at this, okay, what system do we have to put in place to make sure that we don't have those issues that we've seen at the middle school? And as you all know, the high school addition that connected the gym and the older part of the high school, we've had zero problems with that because of the system that the engineers came up there with Ross Tarrant. There's been no problems with any lifting of the floors or anything in that facility. The other thing that has added some cost to this was the fact that if we're going to have that facility located next to our high school, we don't want to have high school students that's having to walk out the front door of the high school, walk up the ramp, and walk into a building. For security purposes, we want to keep our kids indoors. We don't want them outside. And hopefully, as we move forward, hopefully the final phase of renovations that the nickel would pay for would be the renovations at the high school that would take care of the issues that we have with ag and ROTC and some of those issues, and some of the heat and air issues in the gym and all that. So it's part of the long process that will eventually eliminate all that. Well, if we build the career tech facility and we don't connect it in some way, then kids are going to be outside again. So an added expense to this would be the fact that that building has to be connected with a corridor. And they have looked at that, and they have come up with the design on that, and that's going to be an additional cost. It's going to cost probably somewhere, I think, Roland, you said a little over $500,000 for that connector, and it will require elevators at the high school and at the Career Tech Center. Not unheard of. I mean, it's the school district that I came from, the Career Tech Center is connected with a crosswalk, just like this one is. It's indoors, kids aren't outside, they're not in the elements, and plus the safety concerns that they don't have to be outside. So that is a good purchase for us on this facility. And the third item was the fact that we decided that we wanted to hire a construction manager. And you can see the construction manager fees within that building is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $500,000 as well. Which I believe is money well spent to make sure that the contractors are kept, to the letter of the law in terms of what they're supposed to be doing. And it gives an extra set of eyes other than the architect. So those three items in itself has caused there to be a little bit increase from the projected ballpark figure of what this facility would cost to now what we have in a BG1. So real quick, before we go into any design, is, all right, how are we going to pay for it? $5.7 million is basically the grant. I am working with a couple of different firms that we are eligible. We're almost 99% sure right now that we're eligible for close to another $4 million of new age tax credits, which is basically a grant. And how that comes about is that you're eligible, and it's done in rural areas, you're eligible for 30% on top of the total projected cost. So if this building was at $13 million, you're looking at about $3.9 million in tax credits that you're eligible for. How does those tax credits come about? They basically used a $5.7 million grant and the additional bonding money that we would have to use to finish the project. And they take that total project cost and they leverage that against that. In other words, it's set up as collateral. That building is set up as collateral for 7 years. And at the end of 7 years, as long as you move forward in that process, at the end of 7 years, you're basically forgiven that $3.9 million debt. It is a federal program that's put in that allows rural communities to do things that's going to impact the economic development of the area. And we all know what a career tech center is going to do for economic development in our area in terms of preparing young people for jobs. So we're eligible for about $3.9 million. I've been on the phone twice a day with Jim Codell as he's been working with some of the people. He's familiar with this. He's done this before in other projects, and he feels highly confident that we're eligible for that. So if we have 5.7 million, 3.9 on top of that will put us at about 9.6, which means that we're going to have about $3 million in bonding potential. As I told you a minute ago, we're a long way away from selling bonds on this building. If everything goes well, we're looking at November, December of this coming year as a projected start of construction, which means you're talking about in the fall. We're going to know all this in advance as we move forward, how we can move forward on this. So that would still leave us about $3 million in bond and LW if everything falls in line. Again, it's just like the budget and everything else. Here's the issue that you all need to know about, and you all need to think long and hard about this, how you want to proceed. As you know, from day one, this was projected to be a state-operated facility. We would own the building, the state would operate it. We've got commitments from legislators and representatives to make that happen. But right now, it's not in the budget. It's only $200,000 in this budget, not in FY18, or I'm sorry, it's FY19. We only have to have about $200,000 in the FY20 budget. And that's what I've been working on all day. I feel like I made some inroads with that today. And then, of course, what they can do in this budget is they can put the language in there that would basically bind them to operate in this facility in the future for 21 and 22 and on down the road. So we've been working on that budget language today. That's all my calls today in terms of trying to get that in there. You know, there's that belief out there that one of our legislators will tell you, well, you need to go ahead and build it, and if you build it, they're going to fund it. I tend to think that's true, but I hate to sit here and tell you that that's true because I don't want you to bank that on me whatsoever, that I'm telling you if we have a $13 million facility sitting there that the state's gonna come along and say, well, you built the facility, we're gonna put $800,000 a year in it. I hate to tell you that that's gonna happen. Jim Codell believes it would happen. Our senator believes it would happen. But the key is right now, we're trying to work to get that taken completely out of it, to know that it's in there. So that's been probably 5 hours of my day today's been on the phone trying to do that. So I've contacted House leadership, Senate leadership. I'll be in Frankfurt with Jim Codell this coming week. I think if you all have relationships with Senator Robinson, Representative Hill in Powell County's helping us because Powell County has a stake in this and still very interested in being a partner with us in this facility. Representative Harold has a say in this budget as well. So I think if any of those contacts that you all can make, we have to have two things. We have to have the nickel equalized, which I feel very good about, and we have to have the funding to operate this facility. Because if not, we can look at it this way. We can build the facility and you've only got $3 million in it. The state's got almost 10. So surely to goodness, they're not going to let a $10 million investment sit there without students being in it. So we sort of have to make a decision here tonight in terms of how we want Ross Tarrant to move forward. Because here over the next month, as they really get the design on Springs, Estill Springs, and the roof projects is really winding down. They've got pretty good figures, pretty good numbers. We're almost ready to go to bid on those. We'll go to bid sometime mid-April. We're going to approve construction documents here tonight, right? We're going to approve construction documents tonight. So they're going to start turning their focus to this Career Tech Center. And we're going to have fees. We're going to incur fees this April somewhere in the neighborhood between them and construction management and everything else. We're going to incur a couple $100,000 worth of fees that we've got the money we can float. We don't have a problem floating that kind of money, but we can't pay ourselves back until we sell bonds next December or November. So I guess the worst thing we could do tonight, I mean, you could say, yeah, we're going to move forward, and if we build it, they will come, as the movie was. We could take a little bit more cautious approach, which would possibly delay us and put our schedule in timeline, but we could tell them, let's wait until April 1st to see what's in the budget and sort of slow them down a little bit to where we don't incur those fees, because at some point in time you may have to make a decision, hey, we have to slow this down and stop this process, which is going to delay the construction of the building. In my opinion, it could possibly put the grant in jeopardy as well, because they're expecting that money to be used to build a facility. And if we're not moving forward with that, then we could have issues with the grant. Ultimately, I believe that we will only have, I feel really good that we will only have about $3 million in this project. And when I say that, believe me, I don't take it lightly that we've got $3 million in the project. But if the state has 10 and we have 3, they've got a lot more vested interest to make sure that building is an operational facility than we do. So I just want y'all to know where we're at with this facility. We're moving forward. Unless you tell us to tap the brakes here a little bit, we're going to move forward and float that. But if we're going to float that payment, just understand that we don't want to put ourselves in a financial bind moving forward, because it's going to be really important that we sell bonds in November, December, so that we can pay back. We've got contingency money, we've got old construction money, we've got about $300,000 that we collected for the nickel this year that's sitting there in escrow. That money's not even part of your bonding. That's $300,000 cash that was collected that can be used on facilities, because the bonding won't actually take place on those facilities. So that's sort of where we're at with this facility. And then I'll let Roland and them go through and show you everything. Roland, have I left anything out? I've tried to explain it as
very thorough. Yep.
good as I know how. we're just sort of, I guess, do we take the leap of faith here and continue down this road? I can tell you this, we lose the $5.7 million, we'll never be able to build it. We're looking at almost $9 million in bonds and tax credits that we may never have again. So we're going to build a $13 million basically for $3 million of local money. And I can't see into the future. I know that this facility, I believe, will make a huge economic impact. In regard, let's say it doesn't make an economic impact on our community. Think about the students that we're going to put on a path to life, that even if they have to move to Lexington or they have to go to Ashland or Northern Kentucky, they're going to be able to find jobs. And our local economic people are going to be able to use that facility to hopefully recruit. We're never going to recruit a 500-person factory probably in this community, but there's a lot of good small businesses that operate with 50 to 100 employees that have high-paying jobs that I guarantee you right now, we would take about 2 or 3 of those at the industrial park if we could get them in there. And so we're going to be providing a better education for our kids. I think for the education of our kids, you know, I want to say personally, I don't have a vote in this. You all have got the votes. Personally, I'd want to move forward knowing that if something happened down the road, the state didn't do it, I understand that they'll probably put a statue of me up at the courthouse and throw eggs at me. Okay? But I just think we have to be forward thinking here. So that's my spiel, and I'll let you all, whatever you all think.
I've got a couple of questions. When I went through this information, there's one thing that confused me here. On the front of this BG1 form, on item number 7 under site, it says new site acquisition, and the answer there is yes. Why?
Was that a mistake, Roland?
Yeah, it's a mistake.
It's just a mistake.
That's when we drafted this a while ago, we were assuming that there was going to be a new property purchase.
Okay.
Well,
Good
that's what
catch.
we talked about.
That's a good catch, because this BG1 originally was done back in the fall. At that point in time, we were still looking at it for a new site, so that's a good catch. Thank you.
And also on the $220 square foot figure, I wasn't being personal talking on my phone, but I was using my calculator. Not that it matters, it's still the same total number, but when I punch it into my calculator at the total construction cost, I get $241.51 a square foot. If you take the total at 38,000 square foot, if you take the total of 12.56 million, I get $330.52 a square foot, not 220.
Sure, let me try.
And our original was 200 is what we were thinking, and, you know, I am a little concerned that we're $2 million over what we talked about, and we didn't acquire a site, and we don't have to put in a septic handling system,
Right,
and
you have all the utilities on site.
we have the utilities. I was under understanding we may come under that prediction, is what I was hoping for, and I guess I'll just go ahead and explain.
Sure.
I'll shut up now.
So basically, when we met with the construction manager earlier on in design, they were explaining to us that construction costs are just on the rise, and that they would feel more comfortable with the $220 a square foot number. So that's where we ended up with that cost. We also met with the Office of Career and Technical Education in Frankfurt and talked to them about programming the building. And through the programs that they were steering us into that would be beneficial to the school district, we ended up with 39,000 square feet instead of 38. So there's a couple of number issues there.
Okay, that was written down here under C, so those 38,000 is where I got that number. See that down there in the description?
Yes,
Okay, so that's what I was using to do my calculations, sorry.
good catch. And so the 39,000 square feet times the 220,000. Okay, you there?
Make it-
Are you
Yeah.
there? Okay, now we add $500,000 in for a pedway connection, and stairwell and elevator.
Okay.
Then we added $100,000 in for a corridor connection from that stairwell over to the band room, so that your students aren't walking through the auditorium. All right?
While they're doing this, LW, is that there is no entrance into the band room other than accessing it through the auditorium. So when all this comes together, it's going to be in that back corridor where the band room's at. So the pedway will come across. There'll be a new stairwell there with the new elevator, and they're going to tie that in to where those students now will use the hallway to access the band room, and they won't be going through the auditorium, which is a nightmare for supervision and everything else. So there is like a small addition that's going on that part of the high school, which will accommodate for the pedway. That's where that 600,000 comes from.
And that's how you get the 9.18 construction cost.
So $600,000 of it is really at the high school for connecting the building together.
Math working now? Yeah, it was really interesting when we were at the Office of Career and Technical Education. They were really behind wanting to have a physical connection between the high school and this area technology center. They said that there's, having them separated, there's sort of almost like a stigma that's created with the students as far as it being away from the high school, that's where those kids go, to get vocational training. They've noticed in the area technology centers that we've actually connected to high schools. They see a much bigger enrollment there. And there's a lot more interest and a lot more connectivity between the high school and the area technology center. So they were really behind in promoting this idea of connecting the two buildings together with a physical connection. I just wanted to add that on top of what Mr. Saylor was saying from a safety and security standpoint of your students, but that was another just interesting point.
Well, along that same lines, one of the things that we had asked you all to do was to clean up the campus up there and make it have some flow and make sure that the students' safety came first. And I know we talked about several of those issues, and one of the big ones was the entrance to the band.
Yeah.
Well, and you can also see from the traffic patterns on that first drawing that you'll look at, and they'll show us here in a minute. It's a little bit hard maybe to see there. They've cleaned up the middle school where you have a separate parent drop-off entrance, that there's no bus traffic in that loop. And they've also set up that you have a separate bus entrance, that buses only, so no cars in that particular loop, or if there are cars in that loop, it's faculty that's assigned to park in that one parking space. So they've cleaned up a lot of the parking issues that you have there. The high school and middle school, the way those are connected is a total disaster. I mean, it's an accident waiting to happen. I'm surprised there's not been a few. And so they've cleaned up the high school parking area, the high school entrances. So there's a lot of the money that we saved, LW, for not getting the site, not paying for the site, not paying for the sewer, not paying for the utility upgrades in the building for fire suppression. We basically took that money and said, hey, clean this campus up to where we have the ultimate safety for our kids in terms of separate entrances for buses and cars, and providing the additional parking that we needed. So that money just translated into other site improvements for that facility. And once this is done, with the exception of the work that needs to be done in the gymnasium area and the ag and ROTC areas of that high school and your athletic facilities, that high school is pretty much cleaned up. You've got one last project to do and you're finished. You're finished for the next 20 years in terms of construction in the school district. Unless, like you said, we have to replace a roof or an HVAC at the middle school or something like that. So you are basically at that point in time, your facilities are as good as they can be based on the money we have. Would you like for them to show you the design right now and show you what they've come up with so far just on schematics? And as you all know, we've got a meeting Thursday with the steering committee to talk about the programs and everything. We've got 8 members on that committee. And I started to bring you those committee members today, but we have representation from Carhart and the high school and, people here within the office. So we've got some representation on that committee. And maybe just show them the design and what you're looking at right now, and then we can make a decision on how you all want to move forward with this.
So we've been, basically since we last met, we have been really honing in on the high school site with your all's decision to go ahead and move forward with this site. And one of the things we knew right off the bat that was going to be challenging was the elevation change. I'm sure you all know about kind of the little hill, or how the bus garage is perched on top of a small hill. So we've really been looking at where, with this pedway connection, we started looking at, okay, where's the finished floor elevations for the existing high school? How are we getting over to this new technology center? What elevation's the front door going to be at? Where's the second floor going to be at? We knew we were going to have an elevation change, and I'm going to stand over here so I can point without touching the board because it starts to move stuff. So basically, once we had the pedways pretty much driving a lot of the finished floor elevations for the building, and this front parking lot right here, we're looking at reusing. It's already there. We may resurface it or something, restripe it. The end of it's been closed off. If you look at your existing site over here, this is where Mr. Saylor was talking about. There's just a lot of confusion with traffic right there. So we're trying to fix that while we're there working on the building. So one of the items is cleaning that entrance off. So we've established basically 2 points here. One was the road going up to the middle school. That was one defining point. And then the high school entrance. And then this road that goes up to the softball fields and the bus garage. So we just have a very particular width to work in. That really drives the shape of the building as far as like how wide we can go. So we have a certain width we're trying to stick to here, and we're basically going, building deeper into the site and up onto the hill. Originally we had looked at a couple of schemes, and we had looked at some initial ideas. What would it look like if we kept the bus garage? What does it look like if you sort of relocate the bus garage or somehow try and reconnect it to the tech center, because it is an existing building and it was getting difficult to kind of work around. So the scheme we have here tonight keeps the existing bus garage, but it's kind of the best of both worlds in the future. If and when you do have to build a new bus garage, it could be relocated next to what is a diesel lab, all right? So when we were meeting with Office of Career and Technical Education, who are really sort of the area, or not area, but also career, just sort of the tech center plan facilitators up at Facility Management in Frankfurt, they were steering some of the programs that the grant program had outlined, all right? And let's go ahead and, I guess I can do this, right? Oh boy. No, you're gonna have to do it. There we go, thank you. So when we zoom in on the first floor. Can I zoom in here on this thing?
I think it's up here. Ooh. There you go.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's zoom that out a little bit. Okay. So this is going to be the first floor. And so we're down here at this lower elevation at the highway, and you have this parking lot, this existing parking lot, and we're looking at entering the building off of that parking lot. We have an administration suite here, your main entrance over here, stairwell going up to the second floor. This piece would be a 2-story building. It's going to have an IT lab in the back here, and then a health and education lab up front. And you have a bank of restrooms here, as well as an elevator, kind of mechanical room back here. There's going to be a large staircase in this hallway right here. There'll be a large staircase going up to the second floor as well. On the second floor,
And is the backside of that building toward the middle school, is that gonna be underground, like a half basement, or are you gonna have?
no. Do we want to do updates, Jeremy? Restart tonight?
Yeah. Hopefully after midnight.
Okay. So that's a good question, LW. The road, we had to shift the middle school road over. And as a part of that, we're having to build a little bit of a retaining wall. We don't know exactly how far down it's going to have to go because we don't have our survey back yet. We do have our geotechnical investigation back, which is basically our eyes underground. And we've verified that there is, pyritic shale like we were suspecting there. But until we get the survey back, this is going to start sloping up. And so this area is going to be, a little bit carved out there. But it's not going to be underground, so we'll be able to get some windows in there.
Okay, another way of putting this question, is it gonna be level pretty much with the high school, the high school side of it?
This floor?
Yeah.
No.
It's gonna be elevated?
It is elevated, yeah. 6 feet or 7 feet,
Actually, it's on the same level as the second floor of the high school.
so 11
The
feet.
first floor matches the second floor of high
So
school.
it's 11 feet.
Just trying to get in my head what's
Yeah,
going
yeah.
on.
And that's one of the challenges we've been dealing with too. And one of the things we were trying to pull together that hopefully we'll have for you next time is a little bit of a mass model on what this looks like on the site. Because it is very hard to understand with all of the elevation changes, how this is gonna fit on the site.
Now, this is ignorance, me asking this, cause I don't know, but does that shell change the deeper you go? Does it get better? Does it get worse? Or does it depend on the site?
Well, okay, so the way that the shale usually works is that, you'll have topsoil, and then when you get through the topsoil or clay, you'll start hitting some weathered shale, and it'll be kind of some loose shale that's just been subject to erosion. And that will have some pyritic shale into it. However, most of it's probably already been exposed to air and water, so it may have already, for lack of I don't really know, expanded? Yeah, thank you. I was gonna say puffed up, but I know that wasn't the scientific term. So yeah, expanded. Now, the big thing that's kind of concerning is when you actually get down to solid rock and you start exposing that rock. That's where we have to start pouring this emulsified asphalt material spray, basically waterproofing, to seal up that rock to make sure that no air or water gets in contact with it. That's kind of the first step. And that has to be done within the first 8 hours of exposing that. So there's a big concern about that rock surface. The shale that is kind of cut out is usually, I think, just removed and hauled off. The geotech does say that, it's not allowed to be used as fill anywhere. So for example, a contractor can't come in and dig a plumbing line trench, drop a plumbing line in there and somehow use this shale as backfill instead of gravel or something. That's a big no-no because that stuff will just kind of
again, puff out or expand. Okay? Does that help answer the question? So on the second floor, now the second floor of this part of the building is going to be 14 feet above this finished floor, okay? So here's the second floor. And upstairs, you have adult education on the end here with some adult education reception, so room there for an office for adult education. And here's, again, this opening for this stairwell coming up. You have your elevator, and over here is going to be the engineering lab. And one of the things that Office of Career and Technical Education was trying to do was link the curriculum for these lab spaces together. So, for example, you'll see like the advanced manufacturing lab is going to be, we were talking about trying to talk to Carhartt and having them on the planning committee or the steering committee to hopefully get some input from them on what kind of equipment that they use, so that we may be able to get some training equipment. And that would be in the advanced manufacturing lab, usually probably like sewing equipment, textile equipment. Construction technology lab is going to be geared towards electric, which kind of ties into now maintaining that textile equipment. And then the diesel lab, which also ties into the engineering lab, as far as these sort of program overlaps. The advanced manufacturing lab and then the electric technology lab in construction. People learning sort of cross-curriculum among those programs to be able to utilize different aspects of that in the different programs. So there's going to be a little bit of overlap. And so they were sort of, I may not be doing the explanation justice, but they were trying to pair and link these programs together, okay? Which I thought was really interesting.
That's one of the reasons that the steering committee will meet this coming week to discuss that. Right now, that's not necessarily set in stone. We're looking at the construction lab right now in terms of electrical. The committee may decide, okay, yeah, we see the tie that back to the engineering part, we see the tie back to IT, but hey, we think that maybe we want to look at the construction technology part of it, the framing part of it, the masonry part of it. We can go either direction right now. These spaces right now are basically holding space. What technically goes in that is why we need to meet with our advisory or steering committee to decide if that's the way we want to move forward. And the theme was electrical, around electrical and electrical engineering. That was sort of the theme that we looked at, which would tie a lot of these programs in, but of course health science is going to stand alone from that. Diesel mechanics a lot of it will stand alone. Now there are some electrical, as you know, with that type of stuff that could tie back. But the steering committee still has time to say, hey, we don't want electrical for construction. We just want general construction trades. That's still a possibility.
Absolutely.
We're just lining out space right now, and that's why we put the committee together. And hopefully, LW, we don't have anybody, I know you don't do a lot of construction, but you're around some of it, that maybe can bring some of that to the table, that we can have that discussion about what we want to do with construction. Because listen, really both are needed. You can tell you right now, find an electrician here in this area that we can find one. It's a needed trade, no doubt, needed, but so is general construction labor. But we've got to choose. I mean, what happens is that you can't find teachers that are certified to do both. You have to sort of pick and choose, because if not, you're going to end up with 2 teacher programs. And we're already struggling trying to get money to operate. They're not going to give us 2 teachers per program. We're gonna be stuck with about our 6 or 7, eventually it'll be what it'll be. So we've got or time to make a decision about construction and what exactly we wanna look, and that's the, I guess, thing that the steering committee has to look at. That's what we have to look at as programs starting this coming Thursday.
Yes, absolutely. So engineering lab, a classroom, every lab has a classroom, and they'll have a storage room associated with it, tool storage. And over here is advanced manufacturing lab, so again, the classroom, tools, and storage. Then we have a construction technology lab with construction technology classroom, tools and storage, and an office. And then over here at the end, we have diesel technology lab. And again, the diesel technology classroom, office, tools, and storage. So those are all pretty general floor plan layouts for those spaces that come from Frankfurt. And the missing piece now is, again, what Jeff is alluding to, is this steering committee and meeting with people from the county that represent the school system and the community to get additional information from them to help start identifying what equipment goes here and how do we want to further define these spaces, right?
And I can tell you, they were, originally, we had done auto mechanics, but as we got to talking to them at KDE and Office of Career and Tech, they were really excited about the fact that, as you all know, we really need a new bus garage facility. If we're able to parlay this $3.9 million in additional new age tax credits, it will give us the money that we could actually build a new bus garage, which would be attached to the end of the diesel lab in this area right here. And what that does is allows you to have a co-op situation or an apprenticeship situation where kids that are training in our diesel lab can eventually, they can use an old school bus to work on, they can use engine parts or whatever, and it will give them a place where they can actually learn on the job. Of course, they wouldn't be able to do an actual work on a school bus without, somebody sitting right there by them. That would be a bus that would be transporting our kids. But that could be a huge benefit to this, in the fact that eventually you would get a new bus garage as well, which would be tremendous, and quite honestly, on that same site, and there they'd all be together. So I think they've come up with a pretty decent plan in terms of what it would look like, what the future could be in terms of a new bus garage. And I don't know if anybody's got any other questions, but
Yeah, and this is really just an update. This is not like a schematic design approval or anything. We'll come back. We want to definitely meet with the steering committee first and start to hone in. But we do want to share where we are with the floor plan and just kind of share some of the meetings we've had, some of the information that we've received, some of the information we're still waiting on. So yeah, this is where we're at, and we'll be back for an actual schematic design approval later. But yeah, are there any questions we can help answer, or?
just quick, have you got down to anything about maybe what this would look like from the outside? Have you looked at the exterior yet?
Not
You're
yet.
just looking
We
at-
tried to pull that together today, but we just ran out of time. So hopefully by next time we'll have a little bit of a mass model, and you'll be able to see better how this is sitting on the property and how we're kind of negotiating the elevation changes and the pedway and kind of some of what the building shape is going to start looking like.
So this meeting Thursday coming up at 6 is a huge meeting to really nail down program areas and help them moving forward.
Okay. And I think the next agenda item, aside from just sharing the schematic here, is then the BG1 approval, which I don't know if there's any questions about the BG1, other than Other questions that LW had?
I think you have to sort of decide here, and that doesn't mean we don't approve the BG one. I think you sort of have to decide here, do you want to tap the brakes a little bit to see what happens with the budget? Or are we just going to go ahead and proceed knowing that we're moving forward? We do have the money, as I said, to float these payments as they continue design. What we don't want to do is fall behind. If we fall behind too much, we'll not make fall of 21. And, we want to have students in that facility come fall of 21. And I think there's a fall of 20.
Well, I've got a comment. I've always been an advocate for this trade center. I don't want this taken wrong, but I feel like personally, I'm not willing to gamble with taxpayers' money at this time until we know what the budget's gonna do. I mean, with all the uproar right now in Frankfurt, personally, my vote's to tap the brakes a little bit, but that's one opinion out of 5. I mean, like I said, I'm not much of a gambler with my money, and I sure can't gamble with this, because it's gonna have some additional cost if something happens and we can't build. I mean, we've gotta pay you guys, and there's money involved, and that's money lost. I hope that doesn't happen, and I'm not saying I think it will. I'm just, worried about that. There's a lot of uncertainty in Frankfurt and Washington. And they have been known to promise stuff before and back out. Just like the Kisbit insurance. I mean, look what they done to us on that. They left us holding the bag, so.
Yeah, I mean, it's a decision y'all need to make.
It's tough. I mean,
Well, basically what
and
where's
I am
coming from is
100% for this building
Right.
because I think it's needed. I was one of them. I mean, this is something I've wanted since I've been on the board. But at this point, I can't gamble with the money.
Yeah, and it's just one of the things, I mean, and what we talked about was, it impacts the schedule,
And,
So right now,
I mean, it's a tough
if you
decision.
if you tap the brakes, the schedule shifts, by months, and we lose momentum. So right now, we have people staffed on the project, and our engineers have people staffed on the project, and so we've got momentum behind this thing, pushing it forward, where people are committing hours of time towards it. If we put it on hold, everybody comes off of that thing and they go work on other stuff.
I understand.
And then it takes a while to get everybody plugged back in and their heads back into it to start pushing it back forward. So you lose that momentum. And so the schedule impact is going to be what you're going to be facing as far as the design, the bid, and then the construction.
And
Just so you know the impact of that.
And I respect that. I understand that. It's just with the budget questions right now, hopefully we know something by April 1st.
Well, I didn't want to make that decision
It's tough.
unilaterally.
It's
for
tough.
sure.
I mean, there's not a good answer.
So I think that's why you all needed to know the information tonight.
But you're coming from a man that's never bought a lottery ticket. I don't gamble. Okay?
Right.
I'm
Well, I
cut
mean,
right.
exactly. It's
I
all
mean, that's just me.
it's all a matter of what the philosophy is, and
And everybody else up here may disagree, and that's fine. But it's just, it scares me a little bit.
I think I don't want to gamble either, and I take this very serious, and I'm definitely for the tech center, but I think the flip side we have to consider is losing the grant. And that's a big concern of mine if we don't move forward. So I think we have two things to weigh.
I agree.
yeah, it's almost like you're in a pickle and there's not really an exit door. You're sort of in the middle of a maze and there's not an exit door, and the only way out is that you end up with a building that you hope and pray that everybody will do the right thing and fund the operations of it. That's what
And
it
if
boils
they
down
don't
to.
fund the operations, we're sitting here with a $13 million investment and can't afford to pay teachers ourselves. I mean, if this is not state funded, we can't afford to hire more employees. So
And
we're
that's been
banking on
from
that
day
too.
one.
Yeah, I know.
That's been from day one. They've known it, and we've got all the assurances that it'll be there, but, you know, right now it's not there. And so, I mean, it really is a
And
tough
there has been a
decision.
few politicians in the past that have not kept their word.
Yeah. You know, I personally, you know, I'd love to say roll the dice. If it was me rolling the dice, if it was my money, you know, I'd have to really think hard about it. So I look at this as our money. I'd really have to think hard about it. If you lose $5.7 million, then the dream of a tech facility goes away forever. It's gone because you'll not be able to afford it. I can make those calls during the next week. I'll be in Frankfurt, as I told you. Next week, I can go back to KDE. I can go back to Workforce. I have a contact there to just say, you know, we're really struggling here on how to move forward to find out about the 5.7 million. I just don't. I listen to Roland, and then we sort of lose momentum. But if we lose momentum, but if we go ahead and we spend another couple $100,000 here in the month of April, and then all of a sudden we get to May and we have to put the brakes on, then that's $200,000 that we've spent that we don't have the opportunity to get back. It's almost like when we decide to take the emergency brake off and move forward, we're going to have to move forward either with the hopes that the funding is going to come, we're going to know the funding is coming for operations, or we believe wholeheartedly it will. You know, that's like Jim Codell told me today. He says, Jeff, I do not think there's any way they can let you build that facility and not fund operations with everything that they've said. He said, can I promise you that? No. He says, but I believe wholeheartedly that they will have to fund the operations of it. Because honestly, the state and federal government's going to have 9 million of the 13. They're going to have 9 million of the 12 in it. We're going to have 3 million. They're going to have 9. So that's sort of where we're at. So
The session is going to be drawing to a close very quickly, and we should know something very quickly about the
Within-
direction that they're going to take. And in my opinion, even if they didn't fund it and we have put a couple $100,000 into it, that money is not really wasted, because some of the things that they've laid out for us are things that we could still implement even if we had to put the brakes on the facility itself. You know, we would still have great ideas, we would still have some drawings, we know what's out there, we could change the traffic patterns. There's some things that we could still use from all of this, even if we didn't proceed with the Career Tech Center.
just a question, you made me think of something. Roland, if we think about it like this, as in a couple of phases, that maybe the first phase of this is site preparation, and we could sell bonds for the site preparation part of it, that would allow us to move forward with some of the site prep work in terms of all that, and then have a second bond sale later for the actual building itself. Is that possible?
Oh, sure. Yeah,
That where we
that's
could
possible.
get our money back
Yeah, I guess
for the
what
part that we
I
did.
guess what I'm getting at is that I don't know if I'm off or on this. Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is I don't look that it would be wasted. I look that this could be something we could build off of. And so really, technically, we wouldn't be losing $200,000 if all of a sudden we saw that we couldn't move forward right now. We could use this for something
Yeah,
in
and
phases.
That's totally possible. We've done that before.
Yeah.
And just do kind of an early site package, and do an initial
Two
phase.
phases.
Maybe, you know, do some of the road improvements you're talking about, and just fix the ins and outs to the middle school, and make the road adjustment at the middle school to make it wide enough between the 2 lanes here, and do some of the site prep. Yeah, you could absolutely do
Yeah.
some of that.
I mean, I've thought about this a lot. I read through my packet. I've thought about all this. I understand all the concerns that everyone has. I have faith in, you know, I have faith that this is going to work out for us. I guess with all of that being said, I would roll the dice, proceed, and go ahead. But, I mean, I don't know that we've asked for a motion on the floor or anything, but
I think what you would do is you make the motion to approve the BG1 and move forward with design. That's the motion you're trying to make, I believe here, because you just got the design for, that was for your all's information in terms of where they're at. So in the approval of the BG1, you would say that you would approve the BG1 and you would move forward with design of the facility.
with the idea that it could be done in phases.
With the, so I mean, that's a big deal for us as far as splitting this out, this early site package.
But I'm not saying that we would have to do that right now, but if something happens and the state doesn't fund it, we would have other opportunities.
Roland,
Yeah.
you said we would have to have a special called meeting around the first of the month to move the Springs project and the roof projects
Yes.
ahead.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
In order to meet the bond sale, so we're gonna have to have a special called meeting for those. You could approve it tonight, and then by the time that special called meeting hits sometime around the first or second week of April, we're gonna know. And then at that point in time, you could tell them to split it.
Do you
Split it
understand what
into
I'm
two
getting at?
packages.
I mean,
Yeah, it's just letting us
two
move
options.
forward.
Yeah.
And
That's
we just move
exactly
forward,
what,
we
when
just
you
move
said
forward
that,
with that in
that
mind.
hit me, because I know that we've seen, projects before where there's two phases, a site phase and then a.
Right. That's what I'm
development phase.
getting at.
Sure.
I'm not.
That's exactly
yeah.
where you're at, yeah.
Yes,
And
that's
you-
where I
you-
am.
I
That's
know
where I
exactly
am.
where-
So when I thought about this, that's what I was thinking, that, you know, if it doesn't work out, we can still do something.
And I think that's an excellent approach. I think that works for us. So, I mean, we'd love to continue moving forward with the design, because it's, you know, when you have your team assembled, it's hard to get everybody back together when they start splitting up and doing different things. So,
But
So,
this would be about a 3-week delay, it's not like. it's
yeah,
a
just a
month and
minor
half
delay, yeah.
It's a minor
That's right.
delay. to
And we
move
can meet
forward
back
this way.
together, see where legislation's at. We may know more out of Frankfurt and just talk about it some more and see what happens then.
So with this route, it'll still kind of keep us on the same.
it'll still keep us on
timeline.
track.
Like
Yes.
the majority of
Yeah.
the construction during the summer.
Yeah, we'd still be
Start
aiming
school.
for a fall deadline as far as having the design done. Now, when we reconvene or we meet again back in April to talk about the other two projects, you know, when we get to that point, if we want to split it up, we can look at it at that point and see how it impacts the design schedule. If we want to do an early site package, if that looks like the way it's going. Otherwise, we'll just keep moving forward like we are for the time being.
So I make a motion that we approve the BG1 tonight and that we keep on our same time schedule, and see what happens.
Okay.
If I could interject there, I would advise, if you're gonna make a motion to approve BG1, with the caveat of the amendment of 1, 7, and C of BG1 as presented. Because the BG1 is presented.
With those mistakes on
Yeah, with the changes on the front
the
sheet.
wrong
which was
square foot.
the oversight.
You wanna have that in the notes, so that way there's no concern over which form is supposed to be approved here, because technically, without those modifications, you're approving 7 and
As
C.
is, right.
With the revisions made to page 1, Felicia, would be the.
So, okay, we have a motion on the BG1 with the revisions. Do we have a second?
I'll second. I feel comfortable with those changes.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, next on the agenda, we have the Estill Springs renovation project.
All right. So,
Next week, so I'm on top of this.
fringe renovation. So this has been, we've been working pretty hard on this project. This is the renovation project, primarily HVAC, replacing the HVAC system in the building. That's had, I think you've had another unit go down since. Two units go down. So it's obviously, there's a need for this system to be replaced. We've got a couple of other items that we're taking care of in the restrooms, just updating finishes. All the plumbing fixtures are going to stay. And we are replacing some of the canopies on the building as well. And that's where I kind of want to start with this, is on the outside of the building. So we're looking at redoing the canopy at the front. Where am I? Did I flip pages? There we go. Boy, this touch screen, I gotta get used to this, sorry, everyone. So this area on the front of the building, you have these two wings, and you can see them right here on the aerial. And you've got these two classroom wings that come out and face the bus loop right there. And right now you have a single canopy that has these columns in the middle of the sidewalk. We're going to be removing that and putting a new canopy in at that main entrance. And then we're also going to be replacing the blue canvas canopy on the side and making some revisions to this parent drop-off. Right now you have parents driving through the neighborhood and coming down this road, and they turn right here, and you have two good places for parents to pick up and one okay space. It's kind of hard for the car to turn and be against the sidewalk to pick up a student there. So what we're trying to do is add a turn in the road to allow more cars to come in and stack for parent pickup. So we're replacing some sidewalks, both there on the side of the building and at the front. Looking at widening the sidewalk on the front of the building at the bus drop-off. Right now it's, I think, maybe 4.5 feet wide. It's very narrow. So we would be widening that sidewalk and making it wider. About from where the old road that's not open anymore, it goes back to this back entrance here. I believe there's some concrete there. But from there all the way around to almost the end of the exit here. And you can see here's, in this example, the bus is kind of stacked up, right? That's what that looks like. And so about from where that bus is all the way around to about here. Looking a little closer at the parent drop-off area, we would be just installing just a turn right there. So you would have cars able to stack up all along here. The canopy would stop at the end of the sidewalk. So you have room for, was it 5 cars?
It's 4 to 5, yeah.
4 to 5 cars here
Before the striping, yeah.
before the striping, and then if it's sunny out, you could actually put an additional 3 cars back here and have students pick up all the way back to here. So you could, just make that process a lot more efficient.
If you've been to Estill Springs, that is a mess in the back, and it needs to be cleaned up for safety purposes, if nothing else.
Okay. There's some drainage issues around the building in the loading dock that we've been notified about. We'll be correcting those. And also some drainage issues on the side of the building at this classroom wing. So we'll be addressing that with a new trench drain there just to catch the water off of that hill. The whole site slopes towards that, that loading dock and the entrance here on the side of the building. And there's been a couple of instances where water has gotten inside the classroom wing and filled up the loading dock to where it's floated the dumpsters. So the front entrance, coming in, installing a series of columns on either side of your main entrance I keep touching that, I apologize, this is kind of new for me. On either side of that main entrance, opening that up so students have a clear walkway all the way down to the entrance of the building. We've got a little canopy up front here that just connects the two wings. That will be sort of an entrance point, or just a way for kids to get under the canopy a little sooner. And this is what the canopy, this is sort of a bird's eye view of the canopy. So we're looking at extending the gable that's already on the existing building there, and bringing the gable out, and then adding a little flat canopy piece there. And that's kind of what it would look like more from a person's perspective, or if you were sort of walking up to it, or from the student's perspective. So we're adding some brick wraps around the columns that will match the brick on the building. Maybe I don't think we've we had someone come down and find a brick match for us. So. And then on the inside of the building, we talked about, of course, the HVAC, and there's some electrical work that needs to be done associated with the HVAC. One of the other things that we're doing is renovating the administration suite. So on this page, you have on the bottom there the existing layout for the administration suite, and then up here is the new layout. In essence, what we're doing is we're adding a secure entry vestibule. All right, so we're taking this storefront door system and pushing it back so that visitors and people visiting the school are now going to be routed into the reception area. So everybody's got to sign in before they enter the school. A new desk will be installed. We're expanding first aid, the first aid office. The rest of the administration suite will stay the same. So really this front area is what we're going to be impacting. And then over here, right now you've got your principal's office down here. We're going to move the principal up to a new corner office up here. There's currently a workroom up there. And then add the Family Resource Center down here. So the Department of Education wants a door to the exterior from the Family Resource Center. We're actually gonna ask that you guys approve a variance not to include that exterior door. We've done it before with a lot of districts. We just feel like the more doors on a building, the more places for people to get in. So we've had success with that through the Department of Education, getting that variance through there. They're pretty acceptable of that. So the windows here obviously stay the same, but then to get into the family resource area, you have to go through the admin reception area and then down the hallway and into the family resource area. So even they're being checked in through the administration suite. Conference room, SBDM conference room and office, and then a new workroom over there.
What these changes do, guys, is that it brings that building up to code by KDE standards. And basically, when you put the roof on it as part of the other project, you have put this building complete for the next 25 years, unless at some point in time you do a renovation where you would do a space addition. As we talked about at one time, we decided against moving South Urban because of declining population, as LW's pointed out so many times. We may not need to do that as we can shift some population around. So that's down the future, but what you do to this building here is that it's finished. You're not gonna come back later and have to do something 5 years from now and do something else 10 years from now. This building is complete, finished, for the $3.5 million right now it's on the BG1, plus whatever the addition to roof is, you're done with it. And that facility's there for the next 25 years for kids in this county to use. So that's sort of the path that we've taken to bring it all up to standard, up to code, drop-off areas, entrances, secure entrances. It'll be set up just like West Urban is in terms of that secure entrance, providing the safest environment that we can. And so that's pretty much where we're at.
Yep. So tonight, we're asking for construction document approval on the drawings where we're just about complete with them, and we want to send these to the Department of Education for their review and approval, as well as Housing, Building, and Construction for their review and approval.
And when this project goes to bid, it's going to go to bid, just like you all clarified when you approved the BG1. It's going to go to bid, base bid, and then you're going to have the alternate bids for the geothermal well field and for some of those other improvements that you all separated out. It'll go to bid exactly like that as you go forward. Okay? Can they do that in one motion, Roland, that they approve the BG2, BG3?
They can
And
improve
advertisement.
construction documents, BG2, BG3, and then I'd probably do the advertisement as a separate motion. But yeah, and just to Jeff's point, the alternates, we do still have the geothermal HVAC system as an alternate, the LED lighting as an alternate, and we ended up adding a couple as well as we were talking to just staff and administrators about the building. The intercom and clock system we added as an alternate. We added recabling the building with Cat 6 wiring. Okay, so updating the IT wiring, and we also have an alternate for an owner preferred hardware manufacturer. So any new doors that are going in the building would be keyed onto your existing hardware system. That way, everybody's not having to carry another key. But usually, that's a no-cost alternate. We have to do that as to meet the KDE regulations, if you will.
And right now, even with the alternates, you're projecting this, probably you still feel pretty comfortable at the 3.5 to 3.6 range, right?
Yes.
So just know that the alternates are not in addition to that. This includes the alternate, so we're looking at this as the most that this project would cost.
That doesn't include the alternates. That is just the base bid, so the
Okay.
alternates would be added on top.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So how much are we looking at with the alternates?
I don't have, the geothermal well field, I think I don't have numbers for the alternates, LW. I could get those probably together for you and have them emailed out to you. I don't have them with me tonight. The engineers were feeling pretty optimistic about the geothermal well field. They felt like with the trade-off of the increased electrical costs due to having to provide power to a boiler cooling tower system, as opposed to a lower electrical cost if you go with the geothermal well field, that starts to get a little closer. So they're feeling pretty good about the geothermal well field. We're still bidding it as a base.
Have you done the test well yet?
Have not done the test well yet, no. It's been rainy. The weather has not been cooperating whatsoever. We have been asking the test well folks, Moses, pretty much weekly, when they're going to get out here, but they're just, it's out at the field behind the school, and they're going to make, they're probably going to make a little bit of a mess out there. So we just want to try and make sure it's dry as possible before they head out there. But as far as the test well goes, that information, when the engineers get that, that's really going to define the number of wells and the depth of the wells. So as long as we get that before the project goes out to bid, we can include that information in the project. And what that does is that gives you a more accurate bid from contractors, right?
If you don't care, I think it would be good that in the next couple of days, even in approving this, it doesn't impact that you would maybe give a price for the alternates.
Sure.
What sort of a projected price, so you all would know what we're talking about in addition to that. So I think you need a motion to approve the BG2.
Yes, sir. We need a motion to approve the construction documents, the BG2 and the BG3, so we can go ahead and send this off to the state regulatory agencies.
I make a motion that we approve the BG2 and the BG3 construction documents.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I can second.
Okay, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? They're approved.
Now you need a
Motion
to advertise for bids.
I will make the motion to advertise for bids. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
And again, we're not looking that to happen mid-April, right? The advertisement?
Yeah, we were in early April, actually. Yeah, I think to hit the summer schedule right.
Okay.
We obviously want to get this out to bid as soon as possible. But if, we'll put it out to bid when you all want to, obviously. And I know one of the things that we talked about before was kind of holding off on that, so.
That's the bond sale I'm thinking about. The bond sale wouldn't take place at the end of April.
Yes, that's
Once
correct.
the bids are accepted.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
Be sure to get us some prices on these alternates as soon
Sure.
as possible, because we discussed earlier, I was expecting this amount of money for everything, and you, I thought when we were looking at this, it was including everything, so that threw me off a little, so I would like to see those.
Yes, sir. We'll get those together for you.
I think next on the agenda, we have the Estill County roof. replacement project.
Before we move on to the roof, I just want to ask, is this your legal counsel right here? Is it okay if they add a motion on there without an agenda item that has to do with the project? And it's a variance request from KDE for that exterior door on the Family Resource Center.
Yeah, because it's not a special meeting, you can make the board can make a motion to.
We can add it as item C.
Is that okay with you all? Are you okay with that? And otherwise, we're going to end up with a door right here into that family resource area, directly from the outside.
Is that on the original construction documents that they just approved? The door, you've got the door on the construction documents?
The door is not on the construction documents, no.
Okay. It's not?
No.
Okay. All right, so then they've already they've approved the documents without the door already, so it would be subject to that approval anyway, without the door, so.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, if you want to, if you require a specific request for variance.
KDE does require a specific request for variance. They will want to see a motion on that.
That would be fine.
I will make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
And I think from a safety standpoint, that's the wise thing to do. And the door that comes out into the corridor there is an exit-only door, so we're trying to get the same effect that, okay, you come in, you say you want to see the Family Resource Center director, you come into the Family Resource Center, then when they leave, they can go out without going back through the office, so thus, they don't have to share with anything that they picked up or anything that they had leaving the building. They can't go anywhere else. They can't get back into the office. They can't get back in school. So it sort of provides that privacy that is wanted, but it still makes them come through the main entrance for security purposes. So that's why we asked that it be done that way.
Yep.
Okay, so now we have the Estill County roof replacement.
Yes. All right, so I think we start out with the middle school here. So like we talked about before, metal roof, and these are, again, construction document approvals for the project. This is going to replace all the asphalt shingles with metal. You know, it was fairly straightforward as far as the roof project goes. We did have some details. We just had to come up with, we have two different roof types just because of the construction over the gym here is a little different than the construction over the rest of the building. So we have a couple of different strategies that we're using to deal with those two different conditions. This will increase the insulation on the building, so you should see operating costs on the building go down. Yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. It's going to be metal. I think right now, as far as, you know, colors of the metal go, we're probably leaning towards a tan or gray, with the idea that as it fades, it's not going to chalk too much, you know. Usually when you go with the brighter colors like blue or red, they end up fading. And I just feel like with you know, with this roof being done, and, you know, having a 20-year warranty on it, that the longevity of that is really going to depend on the color. It's not going to look like it's getting, you know, it's fading or anything like that. I think it's going to last a lot longer for you. That's the middle school.
And what's gonna happen, you're gonna have, the roof is gonna be good, but it's gonna look awful, is basically what you're saying. If you go bright blue, like a royal blue,
Yeah.
it'll look bad. It looks like it needs to be replaced, although it's
It looked good for 4 or 5 years.
in good shape, yeah.
Horrible.
Because I've seen in the former district, we had to paint a metal roof, which is not any fun either.
Right.
Because once you start trying to paint them, then you've got issues with flaking paint and
Right.
everything else, so it's just one of those things. If we pick the right color, you're looking at a 30-year roof system.
Yeah,
without-
hopefully, I mean, these roof systems are pretty sturdy. You know, obviously it's a 22 gauge metal, so it's a pretty stout system. Estill Springs, a little more complicated. A lot of little gables here. These little areas at the end of the classroom wing are actually flat, low slope roof areas, which gave us a little bit of trouble trying to get the HVAC ductwork through that very narrow space inside the building on the other project. You know, we've kind of tackled that with a PVC membrane. We have dropped the insulation in those areas a little bit just because they're so close at the ridge to where the slope comes down here. So this is sloping this way. And there's a ridge in the middle there. Let me see if I can do that again. Oh gosh, what did I do, guys? There it is. So, right here, there's a high point in this little sliver here. And this slope is coming down, and there's really not a very good place for a vertical transition there. So we're actually dropping the insulation a little bit in that area so we can get a little more of a lip to flash up against. So that was a little bit of a tricky area. This area right here is also going to be PVC. And then over the gym is also PVC membrane, and the rest of it is metal. There's a lot of drainage happening from the roof in these areas right here, there, and there. We're going to try and pick a lot of those up with new underground storm drainage. They're just a little swampy where the water's not draining out and away from the building, so we're trying to capture that and send it into a storm sewer system.
Being kind, let's say a little swampy.
Yeah. Yeah, the ground's pretty saturated there. I mean, you have a downspout here and a downspout here that's collecting, you know, like this downspout's collecting this roof, and then basically, you know, this area right here, this area is collecting all this water, and also, you know, some of the water here is getting into this downspout over here, and so it's just they're concentrated in one area, and we're just trying to pick up as many as we can. I don't know if we got all of them, but we're trying to pick up the ones we can to help alleviate that. But other than that, that's that roof project in a nutshell. And we did end up with, you know, a couple of roof types here. We have the metal roof and then the PVC roof. And yeah. And this is just one sheet out of the drawings, by the way. I mean, we have the rolls of drawings with us that we'll leave here for you all if you want to look through them. Okay. We just want to give you an idea of what the roof looks like, and kind of some of the big picture stuff here. So with that, are there any questions about the roof? Again, it's going to be the same type of roof system as the middle school as far as the metal, with a 2-inch standing seam. We're probably looking at the same color scheme with probably a tan or gray. And with that, yeah, we're looking for, again, construction document approval with approval of the BG2, or there is no BG2, but BG3.
So you need a motion for the approval of the BG3.
Any questions on the documents or the BG forms or the construction documents, or kind of what we're what we're doing.
This is just for the BG3, right, for the, I'll make a motion.
We have a motion. Do we have a second to approve the BG3 construction documents? A second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
Abstain.
That's Ronnie Riddle, that's why I took that.
Okay, so now we need to authorize the advertisement.
Yes, motion to advertise after KD approval.
I'll make a motion for the advertisement. After KD, the approval.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Donna seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you guys for
you.
being here.
Help us move forward with the projects, and we'll go ahead and get everything off to the state agencies and continue to move forward on the schematic design for the technical center. And we'll be back for a special call meeting in April. And I believe you want us to hold off on going out to bid until we meet again, I guess.
On these two?
Yeah.
No, I mean, if we fall behind on these two, we're gonna get in trouble come August. I think we're pretty much in agreement, these two need to move, because we're already gonna have calendar issues. So-
Yes. Yeah, and we want to, especially with that HVAC project, we want to give a contractor as much time as possible to get as much done as they can during the summer. This is going to be a phased project, and so there will be, there will be work happening while school is in session. We've come up with a phasing plan to have contractors work around kids being in school.
They'll
all the
finish
time.
about half of the building during the summer, and then they'll take each wing that, we've sort of developed the phasing plan, using the library as alternate classroom space. So, not ideal, but the problem is, we're not gonna have heat come November if they don't keep the project moving forward. And quite honestly, we're not gonna have heat if we don't get it in. I mean, so the bottom line is, the system's shot. It's not gonna, we're gonna have classrooms without air here in May, because the units are just completely down. So, I think we move forward with that. I know Mark will be here at that April meeting to go over with you all sort of the schedule in terms of when it goes to bid, when the bonds are sold, so we'll know when the money, which is something Angie will be very interested in, is when the money hits the accounts so that we can start making the payments. And we're floating some of these engineer fees and everything right now, so once that money comes in, we'll be paying the district back for that money as well. So it's important that we move forward, yeah.
Okay, will do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Y'all have a safe trip home. If I beat you back to Lexington tonight, y'all have got problems. he left Bell County one night after a meeting, and I said, "I'll catch you before you get to Richmond." It was about Bria when I called him, and he left 40 minutes before I left.
And you caught me. And I didn't get a speeding ticket.
No, not that time.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the 2018-2019 school calendar.
Guys, if you don't care, I really think it's important because this discussion is going to focus around what you do with item number 6G, which is the consideration revising of this school calendar. I would ask that you would move that up to 6G, move it up to item 5A, and let's make 18-19 school calendar B. Would that be okay, Felicia? And we'll just make that because you all really do need to decide how you want to make up these past 4 days. And the bottom line, guys, we
have
had
school tomorrow.
Yes, we are in school tomorrow. We had over 500 residents without power last night at 8 o'clock. So, I mean, this is just for whatever reason, I don't know why it seems like all these freak storms are hitting Estill County. But, you know, last year we had the microburst and had to miss some days because of the damage done by the winds. And now here we are with probably the biggest snowstorm we've had in the spring. I know it's still winter, but I sort of consider it sort of spring. A wet, heavy snow that done the damage that it did. I mean, we've still got a few families in the morning that doesn't have power, but I mean, we're down under 50. That was Ronnie Riddle on the phone a minute ago. So we're down under 50 here, and probably even fewer of that by in the morning. So we sort of need to decide, and really, you've only got one option really for this school year. We'd already revised this once, and I'll just give you all a copy. And you sort of got 2 options here, and the one option is that you just tack the 4 days on to the end. And again, what that does is that impacts your construction schedule. But regardless of what we do here, you've already taken 3 days of spring break. So I don't know that it really matters whether you decide to keep those 2 days of spring break or whether you just want to tack them to the end. You can tack them to the end, and that would make closing day on June 1. Or your other option is on the back, is that you cancel all of spring break and we go to school that entire week. But even in doing that, your closing day is going to be on the 30th. So our hope is that we could have construction crews on property the week of Memorial Day. We might lose a couple days the other way. And I think it's at this point, I mean, I know that there's probably still people with plans for that Thursday and Friday. I don't want to do anything that would upset our families or do anything like that, but I really don't know that it makes a difference whether or not we take that Thursday and Friday of break, or so whether they get the building on Friday or they get the building on Wednesday. I don't know that there's that big a difference, just to be honest. So y'all just need to tell us what to do. Dickie needs to know that, and so that KDE is going to be wanting to know how we're going to revise that calendar.
Well, I hate to bring this up too, but we still have a chance of missing some more days. I've seen it snow pretty big in April. And flooding.
Yeah.
2009, 2010, we went to school on Saturday.
Yeah.
We've done that before, so.
Well, the big issue is that the looming thing out there is the construction, when we can get started, because they're going to need about 10 weeks, 9 to 10 weeks. So that impacts when we start.
We'll have to delay school starting in the fall because of construction anyway. So I'll go ahead and make the motion that we do the option here on the back, and we just go ahead and I'll be the bad guy, and I'll make the motion that we take away the last 2 days of spring break. And I don't like doing that, but
I think we're gonna miss more.
no. It's one of those winners.
Well, there's one thing for sure, if we miss more and we don't do that option, then we're gonna be extending into June.
Oh, yeah.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
Okay, so the motion is to
Take the 2 days.
take the 2 days of spring break, so we will be in session the full week of April 2nd, and closing day will now be set for the 30th, and that gives us a couple days leeway just in case, if something happens. Well, with that, you've got your next calendar. I don't mean to jump in, Rhonda,
No, you're
here, but I
fine.
just thought we'd go into
You are
it.
fine.
So you all would know, of course, what the survey showed us was no different than it showed us before, is that, of course, option 3 is the option that most of the employees would want, or parents. It's not just employees, this is parents, students, everybody had an opportunity. There was 406 responses this time. Comments generally ranged, there wasn't very many comments, to be honest, other than the fact that you still had you had people that still wanted a full fall break, 2 weeks for Christmas and spring break, that full spring break. I mean, that was probably the biggest comment, several not wanting a fall break. But again, option 3 had 56% or 57% of the vote. The other 2 combined had 43. And listen, option 5 was just put out there by me. That wasn't something that I was thinking totally about construction and given additional time. So I do think that, I will say this, I think it may be wishful thinking to think that we're going to be in school by August 6th. I think that may be a week too early. And if we go that route and then we allow a full fall break and then we allow the time off for Christmas and then a full spring break, then we're going to run into the same situation again. The biggest thing that upsets me about this calendar, we do have people that made plans during spring break and they're having to change them now. But my advice to anybody, as long as I've been in the school business, I've always known, living in a school district that misses 20 days because of snow, spring break is never a guarantee. So, I mean, honestly, you should probably never make plans for a spring break, just to be honest, if you're in the school business. So it doesn't matter to me. I do know that you need to think about possible start dates, because if we have to start a week later, then that means that's 4 days that you've got to tack on to the end of the year automatically if you choose option 3. But just know, once you give fall break, then for sure fall break, you're going to have to keep a full fall break. That's going to be a miserable thing to try to take away at the start of the school year.
I'd like to make a motion that we go with option number 3.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second. That's been the most popular to me.
Any discussion?
Well, I would like to say this, I'm torn here, but I think at some point we have to consider the construction, consider our kids first. I do respect our employees and our parents, but just like I say, I don't know that we have a choice, I don't know that we can go that route, but we'll see.
All in favor? Any opposed?
Just abstain, because it don't matter at this point.
Well, I think we try to honor at this point in time the wishes of our employee, and that's not a bad move. Just know that if we do, we may have to, if we see that we're going to start late, maybe at that point in time we can make a move early to let people know that maybe we need to take some of the spring break days then. And if we let them know in August,
Maybe
that spring break at that point in time, if we let them know then, make a note of that. If we have to back it off 3 or 4 days, and then we can turn around and say, okay, we're going to shorten spring break because we're starting the school year late. And that, hopefully everybody would understand. Anybody you would hope would
I mean,
understand
unless the
that.
weather's perfect this summer, we would have a hard time starting by August 13th and being done with construction. I'll just tell you.
Well,
Let's hope we're done.
we're gonna stay on them. I can tell you this, we'll have them, we'll be right in their ears. So I think it'll be okay. And as long as we know that we can adjust, and just so that Felicia, if you would reflect it in the minutes, if we do have to delay the start of school, then we can make a decision on spring break in August. That way we let people know ahead of time, way ahead of time, and we would caution anybody right now not to make plans for spring break next school year because of construction concerns. If we do that, I think we'll be okay, don't you all? Okay. Good deal.
Next on the agenda, we have consent items.
The only one that I would ask you all, well, there's really two, and we'll talk about item D. That is the revision to our sick leave policy, and it has to do with the donation of sick leave. And what this policy has never done is there's really a clear difference between what is considered a sick day for a classified person and what's considered a sick day for a certified person. And those two things are not equal in value. So when we have classified people donating sick leave to a certified person or vice versa, those are really not an even trade. So in order for us to correct this, and this is for next school year only, or it begins next school year, is that the change would be made in our policies that only a certified person can donate sick leave to a certified person, and only a classified person can donate sick leave to a classified person. Then we don't have that gray area there about 2 days not being worth the same. Because if you take, for instance, if you just take a custodian and a teacher, a custodian's day is worth somewhere maybe around $100. A teacher's day is worth somewhere, according to how many years experience they are, $250 to $300. So it does create a discrepancy there between the two that ends up costing the school board in the long run. Because not only are you having to that day used, but you're also having to pay the sub. So I just think it's a good move for us to put that in clarification, and we won't have this issue again moving forward. The other thing is an out-of-country field trip. That is the Spanish trip. And I know, Angie, you've talked to the insurance company, and they were told they'd have to have a rider, correct?
Unless you all choose not to, then say that you don't approve it as a school trip, then it would be back on them. But if it is a school trip, the insurance premium's around $3,000. And as an annual premium, it would cover any other trips. That's the only way they will sell it to you, not as a single trip, but it's a 12-month.
So the actual insurance coverage that they have purchased for that trip as that group really doesn't cover the liability of the school system
Right.
if something was to happen. So you all have to decide if this is a school trip or this is not a school trip. And if it is a school trip and you want it to be a school trip, then we're going to have to purchase a rider that will protect you all as the
I
board.
want your opinion.
I haven't seen the rider, I haven't seen the insurance policy for the trip.
So you're saying essentially, if we want to be a school trip, we've got to spend $3,000 additional on insurance? Is that what it is?
Yes.
But according to this paper, the students are gonna pay their way. They may do some fundraising, but they're responsible for the whole cost of the trip. So even if we said it wasn't a school trip, they can still go, correct?
Well, you've got a situation there, okay, they're doing fundraising, okay? How are they doing fundraising? If they're doing fundraising in the name of the school, then, okay, then is it a school trip? It blurs lines, you see what I'm saying? If they're doing fundraising outside of school, okay, then it's not a school trip. If they're gonna do fundraising inside a school, then they're raising for a school trip, then it is a school trip. So And you're only talking about a situation where there's probably no other group going out of country. Now, we could say if it is a school trip, then they would need to raise the money for the $3,000 rider. Or you all could choose to pay the $3,000 rider, but I don't know that that is a smart budgetary move on our part to do that. I mean, when we're squeezing every dollar, that we're talking about a select group of kids that's going to get to go. And I don't want to knock kids out here, don't get me wrong, by no means. But somebody, in my opinion, if it is a school trip and they're going to raise money in the name of Estill County High School Spanish Club, then we need to purchase the rider.
Has that money already been raised?
I don't know how much money they've raised.
I mean, has it been raised through the Spanish Club? Because what you're really dealing with here, this might be you might be just dealing with a fight over insurance companies. If they have their own insurance, I mean, the liability insurance for the school board is basically for something goes wrong and they sue the director of the trip as an agent of the Board of Education. So then it becomes basically a legal fight as to whether they're acting within their scope of authority, whether they were, as an agent or not. If they're not an agent, then you all have no liability. The insurance doesn't attach. So if they are, then the insurance does attach. Well, if fundraising has been done already, if fundraising is being done, whether or not
It's a school trip already.
whether or not you designate it now, you could still be on the latch. But I can't say for certain because I haven't read I don't know what the proposed rider is from the insurance company for you all, and I don't know what the terms of the insurance are for the trip that they have now. So it's really all about the contract a lot of times and how it's worded.
Usually how this works is usually they deal with foreign language type situations, and the sponsor of the trip is really quote unquote an employee of the tour company. They're sponsoring the trip for the tour company. So thus they're really not, and in a lot of cases, the sponsor of the trip as putting the trip together, part, if not a part or a percentage of their fees are paid for. So it's almost like the tour company is paying them to organize the trip. In that particular case, I think it's not a school trip. It's basically a trip organized outside of school time. But what's making this a school trip is that they're raising money in the name of the school. So it's really a sticky situation. Our insurance company doesn't want us to really approve it. I can tell you.
This would not cover any liability.
There'll be no liability if something happened. The teacher's not covered, none of the kids are covered under our current policy, period. Even if we declare it a school trip, we're not covered without purchasing the rider. And quite honestly, I didn't even know about this trip that it flew up on the radar.
Now, another option that you can do is you can table it until the special meeting so that you can get some more information as to,
So if we don't approve this trip, they can't go even as a non-school function, right?
I thought they could.
Yeah,
go if they're
it would be
paying their own
outside
way.
the school.
They can, if we don't approve it, that covers us legally. It's not a school trip.
It's not a school trip, we just say,
Maybe,
yeah.
but they can go.
Well, you can't stop an individual from going.
Yeah.
No, it's just simply a question of, I guess, is it school sponsored? School, does it have the school's blessing, so to speak? Are you going as the Estill County Spanish Club? I guess would be the best way to put it. Or are you just going as a group of individuals who happen to be in the Spanish Club?
Well, let me ask you a question. Could we table it to the special meeting and give them the opportunity to say whether they want to be a school trip and they want to come up with an extra $3,000 for the rider, or whether they don't and want to go as individuals? Can we do that, Jeff? Jason?
You can table the request, you can pull this out of the consent action items, not act on it tonight, and then do whatever motion you approve or disapprove. And then you can take that specific action item and put it on the agenda for the next for the special meeting.
Does that make sense to you, Jeff? And give
Yes,
them
it
the
does.
Opportunity to purchase a $3,000 rider?
I know that when I
And they
spoke
may
to
want
them,
that.
well, I know that when I spoke to them about purchasing the rider, that's when I got back, well, they're already paying for insurance. But that's where we've got this line, we've got a blur here, is,
And it might be helpful too for me to take a look at the insurance that they have.
That would be,
yeah.
well, I'd like to pull that out of the.
And that's fine with me, and then there's no need, we don't need to debate it until we look at it.
Right.
In the meantime, can you get her to get him a copy? of the
Education
insurance?
first, we'll get with them tomorrow, Angie will get with them tomorrow and tell them to send a copy of the rider for the insurance that they
And
had.
send a copy of the insurance they have. And then, okay, yeah.
And this Spanish Community Club, is that our Spanish club at the high school? Is that what they're talking about as the Spanish Community Club?
Yes.
That's what I understood.
Okay.
I'm not certain of that.
Now, it's my understanding though that this, I mean, they have done this in the previous years.
They have, yes. They went last year.
And see, we didn't even approve it last year. It went under the radar. But was it approved? I don't remember it. Of course, I've
I brought
not,
up the insurance because
I slipped a bunch of times for
Things
that.
are happening, more and more things are coming out about liabilities with Board of Education.
Did
Well,
we ask
and our
insurance last
insurance
year,
company
Angie?
may
Do you
change.
remember?
Our insurance company could have possibly changed their stance on this since last year too.
Yeah.
You know, the more you get sued, the more money you're out, you change your rules.
But you hate to pay a $2,600 rider for an insurance policy for a trip every year that consists of 5 or 10 kids.
Another issue too, if they did adjust the terms of your policy and didn't provide you proper notification.
Yeah.
That's another issue.
We'll pull this one out then. We'll have more information at the next meeting. I'm crazy. I sure don't remember doing this last year. I don't remember.
We need a motion to exclude consent item E from the action items.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? John, your second. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? So we'll put it on the agenda.
rest of the action items is
Well, I've got a question for Andy first, and I think I got it answered in the architect's deal, but I want to clarify. Under the warrants, on page 42,
On the big one,
well, there's a couple big ones, Andy, come on. Not the biggest, I don't think. No. Yeah, not the general fund munis stuff, but the second biggest one, I guess. There's 3 payments in there to the architects. Is that, it says architect fees for CAR. Is that for the Career and Tech Center? Is that fees we're already paying? Is that what that is? It's on page 42. There's probably only 2 of them with 42 pages. You see it?
those are all career and tech
Okay, so that's fees we've already paid. Okay, that we will reimburse. I thought that was answered. One,
That's a parent.
Oh, that's a parent?
Been out of power for 60 hours.
and on the small warrant,
It'll be okay.
you know, we really need to label these A, B, and C for reference. On page 4, the $1,650.28 for the phone, is that for the whole central office? Windstream
No, that's
Communications.
the whole district, we get one bill.
Okay, it was listed under superintendent, and I didn't think Jeff had talked on the phone that much, but it says superintendent phone, and I just.
How's that long distance
I
call to
was wondering
Belize
where-
checking out that trip?
Yeah.
If you look over there on the left-hand side.
You forgot to hang up, Jeff.
That's, that coding is where that description's coming from. That 001-1075 is superintendent's office, and then 0532 is phone.
So that's phone for the
That's
whole.
the district.
I assumed it was either here or the district, but I just wanted to clarify that. Okay.
Well, it's one bill, isn't it, for the
Yeah.
entire district that comes through, so it's paid
It was
through.
under
And then the schools
superintendent.
are in, yeah.
And for the check signature authority revision, that was just to remove Mr. Burkhart's name from the middle school.
Okay.
So I think you've got
Okay, so we need
a
a,
second, yeah.
we'll need a motion to approve, I think.
So
The last motion was that to approve, or was it just to pull that out?
All one, but
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
they
So that's
removed
what- I thought
H
so
and
too,
approved,
but-
so you got a
Okay.
motion and a second, right? Did
And
you?
we
vote?
We voted, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Pass you.
All-
So you just
yes.
had questions after the vote?
I had questions
Okay.
about some of this other stuff,
Good deal.
because
Okay.
whatever E is out.
Just for this, just for the sake of motion to approve.
Approve it.
the consent. Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve items
hold
A
on.
through D,
Pull
F
A.
and G. Pull A, okay.
Because I have to abstain.
You abstain from A.
Okay.
And y'all vote for us.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Donna seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?
Okay.
That was confusing.
Got it.
Okay.
Turn the heat on while you're out there, or build a fire, or.
Jeremy, turn the heat up right there. I think Margaret,
sweating over here.
Margaret turned it down a little bit. She
We're
thought it's too
shaking.
hot in here.
Now, whoa, whoa,
shaking.
whoa.
Just holler, it's
Leave
back
that
there.
down, we're on a strict budget. It'll be all right. It'll make them go faster.
District, I must inform you, it is better for you to put on a coat.
Here, Donna. Oh, I didn't know, I'm sorry.
It's not just Donna, it's like the
tip
two
of my
other
nose is
girls.
I have to say, listen, I
two
can
of the
tell you
girls.
it's cold in here because I've got a jacket on and I usually don't complain about being cold, but
I feel it's awesome. You're gonna make me sweat.
Okay, do we have any public comments?
It's getting hot in here.
Okay, next on the agenda, we have the superintendent's report.
okay, you've got the notification of personnel action. And since then, we've also had the resignation of our diesel mechanic. You all had asked about that before. That has happened, and we are in the process of advertising right now for a replacement. You have my, well, you don't have it yet, but my report in terms of my activities during the last month.
you need one more.
Need one more? Oh, I gave you
Something
my,
else.
I gave you my survey results. The safety forum update, these were the suggestions from the safety forum. I can tell you we've had several, and I just want to share these with you all. The suggestions that came out of that, and there's some of these we're already working on. We had a meeting today with the Kentucky Center for School Safety. We also had a meeting with emergency management this past week, and we had representatives there from the fire department, EMS, local police department with Irvin City. And of course, Ronnie Riddle was there, so there was a lot of things that were discussed in there, trying to make sure all of our schools have a safety plan. They're all sort of different. So thus, there's different language being used by different schools, and that's one of the things that we're going to take the time to clean up over the next little bit. So we will know that if we're in a soft lockdown, what is a soft lockdown? What is a hard lockdown? So that the language is the same. So that's one of the big initiatives that we're getting ready to try to clean up. There's some other things, of course, it's not for public information that we're doing. Have already implemented with our principals, and I'll be glad to share that with you. I've got minutes from the principals meeting that we had, things that we immediately put in place. So we're looking at each one of these. We've had 2 different groups now that has contacted us about emergency medical type situations, like to deal with bleeding if in case of a wound. CPR, all those things. We've had a couple people step up. Erica Adams, our health services coordinator, is making contact with those people. So we're rolling out some things. We've got plans in place, but that doesn't mean they can't be better. So, and I thought the public forum went really well. Those of us that was there, I think it was very beneficial. I think parents, they have a right to be concerned. They have a right to ask questions, and we have the responsibility of trying to provide that safe environment. So I think it went very well. There was a lot of things that we learned that we can make improvements on, and there's some things, that we just need to correct. So I just wanted to share those with you. That came out of that meeting. Just a pension budget update. News about the pensions right now. Senate Bill 1 is probably dead. I mean, it's dead on arrival. There's no way that it'll be approved as Senate Bill 1. I don't know what that means. There are some hopes that there's going to be a different pension legislation come out that everybody can have an agreement on. But the hope is now that the budget's not held hostage because everybody's mad over the pension. So there was some movement today with the budget that was positive. We'll just have to see. There's 11 days left in this session. 11 actual days that they can meet without a special session. And as I told you all, I would be in Frankfurt this week. They are encouraging school districts to have a presence this coming week, especially on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I don't know how you feel about that. There has been legal stances checked that you can allow employees to go and make a presence during those meetings. We definitely don't have the ability to take off a day and everybody go, because we know what happens when you take off a day and everybody goes. You've got 10% that's really dedicated that go and they show up, and you got the other 90% that's going to do yard work or shop or do whatever. They have talked about whether or not maybe we want to send a small contingent. School systems can allow them to go in a school vehicle if we wanted to do something like that. I don't know how y'all feel about that. I'm really worried right now with a few days left before testing. If we were very selective about who went, maybe that would be a thing. I will be going to some of them as the representative of the school district. Maybe y'all think that's enough. But before testing, I don't think we can take kids or teachers out of the classroom. I think we still have that. We can debate in June and July in terms of what kind of protests or anything, and I'm not against protests after school, before school, during lunch breaks. If people want to do that like they're doing across the state, I do think we have an obligation to teach kids right now. I just feel that with all my heart. Surplus report, that's just from the surplus update to let you know how that went. That's Jeremy's report. You got a fundraising quarterly report from all of your schools. That's just for your all's information, sort of let you know what fundraisers are going on. And you've got your energy managers report that's due quarterly. And better numbers this month.
Very happy to see that West Sterling has decreased. Basically what we covered, so it was running all the time. So now we're only setting that back by 3 degrees, and I think you'll notice that it had a, I think a 6% savings. Just to, I don't even know if that's what it was.
Well, if you want central office to stay the same, remember to turn that down.
So, we are continuing to save a lot of money through energy, and the good thing about Estill Springs is as soon as that system comes online, Estill Springs has always been pretty good with energy, although we had a system out there that's crippled. It'll be our next Energy Star school, and it'll be something that you can be proud of. Then 100% of your schools will be Energy Star related, and I hate that thing. But it's one of those things that we're making a lot of progress with energy, and we're keeping an eye on that. And as we take care of these buildings, we will see that these projects are going to help us save a lot of money. And what's going to happen, we're spending bonded money to save general fund money, which will help the bottom line as we move forward. Last thing I have for you, this got brought up, and Don, it may have been you that talked about this, and there is a huge push right now for school districts to become tobacco-free. I guess since the legislature can't even get together on something like this, that is for the health of everybody, now they're asking school districts to do it. I'm not telling you that you need to do it or you don't need to do it. My biggest concern is that if you do it, how are we going to enforce it? Because if you go 100% smoke-free, that means about the only place that anybody could smoke would probably be in their vehicle, and I don't even know that that's allowed under this policy. I'd have to do a whole lot more checking into it to see exactly what that means. But now we're talking about at football games, at basketball games, we're talking about every public event that there's no smoking once you step on Estill County School property, or no tobacco usage. I personally, you don't want to get me started about people smoking in restaurants. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I know that people have a right, but I feel like I have a right too. But if we did decide to do something like this, and I can gather some more information, this group would be more than glad. They'd even come talk to you if they want to. But they're really making a push to try to get all school districts. But again, if we did something like this, that's going to be hard to enforce that. How you going to enforce it at ball games and that type of thing when you got people that steps out of the gym to smoke and that type of stuff? We'd have to create a lot of signage, and we would just have to ask them to, refrain from smoking. I mean, it doesn't mean that we can't do it. I'm just telling you, you've got another issue that you got to deal with. But
how about our employees that use tobacco? I mean, where are they gonna leave school grounds?
Well, that's a good question, and that's a question we have to ask ourselves. Are you going to refine them to a car?
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm sure these other districts have been through some of these same issues.
And I know some of these.
We could gather information from.
I know some of these gentlemen that's on here, and I don't care in the least. I will follow up with this, but I just wanted to let you see. This today is just to let you see how many districts have done this. And I know some of these people personally. I'll call them and I'll ask them those questions.
Ask them about the enforcement. How do you enforce it at ball games? What do you do with your employees that smoke?
Yeah. And and that's a good question. The hospital right now, they're smoke free, but they come down here and sit in their car in our parking lot. So I don't know where they'll go if we ban it here. I'm sure they'll find somewhere else. But we've got to, if it's something you want to do, I'll get the information for you. I just wanted you to see how many school districts have adopted it. And quite honestly, I think the time has come and gone that we really have to look at smoking in public places and what it's doing, especially secondhand smoke. And when Kentucky leads the nation in smoking-related illnesses, to me that says a whole lot. So I just wanted to share that information with you all, and that's really all I have.
Okay. So we will need a motion to go into closed session. Do we have a second? Tom? Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed?